Good evening, I'm Yochanan El-Rom, and this is IBA News, coming to you from Jerusalem. We open with the ongoing international pressure on Israel to launch a still undefined investigation into the Navy's raid last week on the flotilla bound for Gaza, in which 9 people were killed. Joining me now in the studio with the latest is IBA's Eli Wagalanter. Eli, what is the government waiting for?
Well, yes, Yochanan, the government has still not announced publicly, formally, that there is a commission of inquiry, but it has, though, in principle, decided to do just that. After 5 days of meetings, the government's 7 cabinet senior ministers, known as the Septet, agreed yesterday to establish a panel of jurists to probe the raid. Their work would be an independent one of an IDF probe, and we'll get to that one in a minute. It's being reported that the state probe would be comprised of top jurists with experience in international and marine law. 2 international jurists, at least one of them American, would be invited to participate as observers. The mandate of this commission would be to examine whether the Navy used proportionate or disproportionate force during its takeover of the Turkish-flagged Marmara, as well as examining the legality of Israel's naval and land blockade of the Gaza Strip. The Forum of 7 ministers also decided that the panel will not be allowed to interrogate soldiers or officers who took part in the commando raid, nor question any ministers. As of now, no announcement has been made, first because the proposal must be approved by the full cabinet. But that won't happen, insiders say, until the U.S. indicates approval of this forum and its mandate. Because if this proposed commission of inquiry and its directive is not acceptable to the Obama administration, then there would be no point in establishing it. Now, some of the answers that the U.S. will want before giving their okay is whether the Israeli inquiry has enough independent powers and teeth to be considered credible. Otherwise, the U.S. risks being seen as part of a whitewash. In the meantime, IDF Chief of Staff Gabi Ashkenazi announced yesterday the formation of an internal IDF investigation into what happened. General Giora Eiland, the former head of Israel's National Security Council, will lead it. According to a statement from the IDF, the team is charged with determining the outcomes and lessons learned from the operation using Navy testimonies gathered following the incident. The members of the team include professionals with expertise on the matter who were not a part of the operational chain of command during the incident. The findings will be presented to Ashkenazi by July 4th. Yochanan?
All right, thanks, Eli. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad told a boisterous crowd at an Istanbul mosque today that Israel's attack on the Gaza-bound flotilla sounded the death knell of the Zionist regime. He said the killing of 9 mercenaries on the Turkish ship was the last in the line of unmatched crimes in Israel's 60 years that have been unprecedented in the history of mankind. The crowd replied with cries of Allahu Akbar. Ahmadinejad was in Turkey for the summit of a 20-member group of Asian countries. He boasted that Iran and Turkey were the standard bearers of humanity and morality, and added that the 2 countries were brother nations that would stand side by side until the end of the line. Well, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad later joined Russian President Vladimir Putin and other world leaders at the 3rd conference on interaction and confidence-building measures in Asia. Putin wasted no time in condemning Israeli actions during the Gaza flotilla raid, and added his voice to those calling for a special investigation of the incident. The brewing diplomatic crisis between Israel and Turkey is expected to top the agenda of the Intergovernmental Asian Security Forum, which was established in 1992 and currently comprises 18 members, including China, South Korea, Syria, and the Palestinian territories. In other news, at least 8 policemen were injured today in Beit El after civil administration and police forces arrived at the settlement to destroy the foundations of 2 buildings that were declared in violation of the freeze order. The settlers said more than 20 were injured by tear gas. After the forces demolished the buildings, they were set upon by some 150 settlers who tried to block their exit. The settlers hurled objects, including large stones, and attempted to slash the tires of security force vehicles. 4 settlers were arrested for assaulting policemen. Both sides gave conflicting accounts of who started the violence. President Shimon Peres today arrived in Seoul, where he will hold 4 days of talks with South Korean officials, including President Lee Myuk-bak. Peres' visit comes amid concerns that it may affect Seoul's diplomatic efforts at the United Nations. In the wake of the Gaza flotilla incident, South Korea downgraded Peres' visit from a state to a working visit. Seoul wants the UN Security Council to punish North Korea for allegedly sinking one of its warships with a torpedo, killing 46 sailors in March. Local media reports have expressed concern over Seoul possibly losing international backing by hosting Shimon Peres and at the risk of being seen as favoring Israel. Throngs of mourners from all over the country attended the funeral last night of beloved former Sephardi Chief Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu at Har HaMenuchot Cemetery in the capital. IBA's Sheila Zucker has the story.
Over 100,000 mourners from all sectors of the religious spectrum, Sephardi and Ashkenazi, participated in the funeral of former Chief Sephardic Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu. The funeral procession, which departed from Heichal Yaakov in the Kiryat Moshe neighborhood, began at 10 p.m. and ended close to 1 a.m. At 4:20 on Monday, surrounded by his family, the spiritual leader of the national religious movement in Israel died after a lengthy hospitalization in Shaare Zedek Medical Center. The 81-year-old sage was born in the old city of Jerusalem to a family with roots in Baghdad. He was recognized as a prodigy at a young age and went on to become Israel's youngest rabbinical court judge, or Dayan. After a long career as a rabbi and Dayan, he was chosen in 1983 as Chief Sephardic Rabbi, the Rishon LeZion, a position he held until 1993. Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu led the national religious public in matters of law and philosophy, and will long be remembered as the Sephardic chief rabbi who encouraged settlement of all the land of Israel, opposed the expulsion from Gush Katif, and expressed disbelief that could occur in a Jewish state. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu issued a statement expressing the national sadness at the loss of a great rabbinic leader. And Mayor of Jerusalem, Nir Barkat, eulogized the rabbi as a great Torah leader, someone who loved Israel, and a person who always found the good in people. This is Sheila Zucker for IBA News.
More now on the death of Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu, and I'm joined in the studio this evening by Mati Wagner, former religious affairs reporter and now editorial page editor with the Jerusalem Post. Mati, thanks for coming in this evening. How or what will be the legacy of Rabbi Eliyahu?
Well, it's important to, in order to get a good picture of who Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu was, it's a good idea to compare him to Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. These two figures, these two rabbinic figures, were the greatest Sephardi sages of this generation. And if you look at Rabbi Ovadia Yosef's life, you see that he worked towards consolidating the Sephardi population and even set up a political party, a cultural movement, an educational system that emphasized the Sephardi roots of the population, Sephardi population. I think that Rav Mordechai Eliyahu went in a completely different direction. He was more an integrationist. Because of his right-wing views, he was kind of co-opted by the National Religious Party, and he basically was able to bring together an integration between Sephardi and Ashkenazi Jews, to the point where today there really is no difference in the national religious population between Sephardim and Ashkenazim. There's marriage between the two, and it's very much different in the Haredi population. You note that there's very little intermarriage between Sephardi and Ashkenazi Haredim.
How will his death affect the religious Zionist settlement movement that he championed for so many years?
He was the last great sage that was kind of, there was no one who really could equal his level of learning and Torah knowledge, and therefore it's a great vacuum that's created as a result of his
You
his
mentioned
death.
this vacuum. Is there anyone that's going to be able to step in and fill his role?
Not really. I mean, he has a son, and there's a rabbi from Ramat Gan, the chief rabbi of Ramat Gan, Rabbi Yaakov Ariel, but there's nobody really of his stature. And I think that we're entering into a new period, new era, really, in religious Zionism, where you have a lot of different rabbis expressing different opinions, and it could be that there are many differences. It's a very diverse population, the religious Zionist population, and you'll have people who are very much supportive of the government, supportive of any government policies, are opposed to refusing army orders to, for instance, dismantle settlements in Judea and Samaria. And you have other rabbis that are very much in favor of refusing orders. And I think that these differences might continue to grow. The rift within the religious Zionist community might continue to grow.
You mentioned Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu's role in integrating Ashkenazi and Sephardi Jews together. Aside from that, what maybe was another great accomplishment that you see?
Besides that, I'd say that as far as an accomplishment, I would say that he was a man that championed in the end, he was opposed to refusing army orders, for instance, during the disengagement, the Gaza disengagement. And he was very, very much, in the end, a moderate in a lot of respects. He never supported violence. And it's safe to say that if push came to shove and settlements had to be dismantled, that he would not condone violence in these cases.
Is there anything, maybe from a personal nature or personal standpoint, that is a little known fact about Rav Eliyahu that you're aware of?
Right. Well, one little known fact is his grandmother what happened to be a very very knowledgeable Torah sage. In other words, she actually answered questions, halachic questions for people at a time when it wasn't, there was no feminism and there was no women's rights movement or anything. And it's interesting that Rav Mordechai Eliyahu himself, very much not a feminist. He was very much, he even opposed the women standing up and speaking in front of men, teaching Torah to men. He actually even said one time that if women stand up in front of men and teach Torah, then should be pitied because they lack the Torah knowledge to go out and learn the Torah themselves. So that's an interesting kind of tidbit about him.
Monty Wagner, former religious affairs reporter and now editorial page editor with the Jerusalem Post. Thank you for sharing some insights into a great sage and one that's going to be missed here in Israel. Thank you. The Reuters news agency faced allegations of anti-Israel bias today for publishing edited versions of photographs taken by the IHH activists during last week's naval raid. An American blog, the Little Green Footballers, or LGF, service of manipulating the images. This after Reuters cropped out activist knives and pools of blood from the photos, which were originally published in the Turkish newspaper. In the first photo, the Reuters version shows an IDF commando laying on the deck of the Turkish ship Marmara after cutting the image to remove a serrated knife in the hand of the so-called peace activist. In the second and more telling Reuters photo, an IDF sailor is seen being held down by Turkish mercenaries aboard the ship, but the unedited image reveals a knife at the right side of the photo and a large pool of blood dripping on the handrail. LGF web designer Charles Johnson then enlarged the portion of that photo that had been deleted by Reuters, in which a third bloodied commando can be seen laying on the floor. Reuters said the pictures were cropped to leave out the margins without intending to alter the context. Following the outcry, the news agency has now republished the original unedited photographs. This is the second time the LGF website exposed Reuters for its photo editing. The agency admitted to graphically tampering with a photo during the Second Lebanon War, manipulated it to falsely depict greater damage by Israel. The long career of U.S. journalist Helen Thomas has ingloriously come to an end amid a scandal. The 89-year-old Washington reporter worked her White House beat for half a century, earning her a seat of honor in the presidential newsroom. Thomas was forced to resign from the Hearst News Service after being caught on video saying that Jews should get the hell out of Palestine and go back to Poland and Germany. Thomas's decision to call it quit came days after being lambasted for her offensive and bigoted words that were captured on video and spread throughout the Internet. In a rare statement, the White House Correspondents Association described Thomas's comments as indefensible. White House spokesman Robert Gibbs had this to say.
Those remarks were offensive and reprehensible. I think she should and has apologized because obviously those remarks do not reflect certainly the opinion of, I assume, most of the people in here, and certainly not of the administration.
And returning now to the issue of an investigation into the Gaza flotilla operation, I'm joined here in the studio by Michael Partum of the Movement for Quality Government. Michael, thanks for coming in this evening. Is your organization calling for an inquiry into this incident?
Actually, no. We haven't yet discussed the matter, but I can say that we and thousands of our supporters are very big fans of independent investigations and thorough investigations. Clearly, this incident with the flotilla, the outcome was not the best outcome, was not as intended. Things did go wrong, and so I would say personally that I'm in favor of a thorough investigation of the incident.
You say an independent investigation. Would that be an Israeli-sponsored independent investigation, or are you leaning more toward an international investigation of inquiry?
Well, first of all, there are a number of investigations that should be conducted. The Army, of course, must conduct its own investigation. The government has a broad spectrum of options available to it, from a ministerial committee to a full national committee of inquiry headed by a Supreme Court judge. The Knesset can also appoint a committee. The state controller has the power to investigate the matter. Probably more than one commission is required in this case. It's interesting, but in reviewing the legal grounds for the appointment of a committee, both in terms of a national committee of investigation and also in terms of a governmental committee appointed by a minister, there does not seem to be any limit on the identity of the participants, members of the committee. In one case, the National Committee, a Supreme Court justice must head the committee. In the other cases, however, and for other members of the committee, there doesn't seem to be any limitation. Therefore, it seems to be perfectly legal for the government to appoint a committee made up both of Israelis and non-Israelis.
Some have expressed concern that a governmental appointed committee might not have the authority to, say, question the military leadership or politicians. Would that be acceptable from your standpoint?
The most authorized commission is one established, headed by a Supreme Court justice, established under the laws of commissions of inquiry, which has the power to subpoena witnesses and has other authority granted to it, and is truly, truly independent. In this case, however, it's not clear that a government commission headed by a judge, such as the Vinograd Commission, could not do an adequate job. You know, the Vinograd Commission, in the end, was not a full state commission of inquiry, but was a government-appointed commission of inquiry headed by Judge Vinograd. The results were very interesting and, in many cases, very fruitful. We had a direct input into the establishment of the committee and the strengthening of its powers. So it's not clear that a government-appointed committee would not have the authority and the mandate to do a thorough investigation. Obviously, the question of mandate is important. How you define the committee's mandate is clearly up to the government. But headed by a judge with the proper mandate, it's not unreasonable to expect it to do a good job.
Would it be in Israel's best interest to invite international observers?
Well, I think the important thing from Israel's point of view is to do a thorough investigation. And our interests are not necessarily the interests of other countries who might participate in such a commission of inquiry. I don't think it would be harmful to have observers, foreign observers. I'm sure there will be anyway, closely observed. And it's not clear that however the government establishes a commission, that there won't be elements of the international community that just won't accept it anyway. So I think an important point to keep in mind is for us, the commission is for us. The commission is to find out what went wrong, what went right, what can we do to improve matters. And so we have to think of the best composition to do the best job. Appoint people such as the people who were appointed on the Vinograd Commission ultimately, who did an excellent job. Just one note on the Vinograd Commission. One of the interesting conclusions of the Vinograd Commission was that in any military operation, which had a political, diplomatic consequences. It was very important to include people in the Foreign Office in the decision-making process. So it would be very interesting to see if that conclusion of the Vinograd report and recommendation was implemented in this case, and to what extent the decision-making process that went in to the stopping of the flotilla incorporated the conclusions of the Vinograd, and clearly, based upon the results, we should try to do a better job.
Michael Parton with the Movement for Quality Government. Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome.
A bail hearing will take place Thursday in New Jersey for two men charged with planning to murder, kidnap, and maim U.S. citizens outside of the United States. 20-year-old Mohamed Alessa and 24-year-old Carlos Almonte were arraigned in U.S. federal court yesterday. The two men are suspected of having links to an al-Qaeda-linked Islamic terror group in Somalia. The charges carry a maximum penalty of life in prison. The prosecutor said he will ask that bail be denied because the suspects pose a flight risk.
Last Friday, our office filed a criminal complaint charging Mohamed Alessa and Carlos Almonte with conspiring to kill, maim, and kidnap persons overseas in violation of federal law. As you all know, the two defendants were arrested on Saturday night at JFK Airport as they were going to get on planes to Egypt en route to Somalia.
In other news today, a 21-year-old man and a 17-year-old woman were found dead in an apartment in the Nachlaot neighborhood of Jerusalem belonging to the girl's mother. Police investigators believe the cause of death was drug overdose. The dead were identified as Lee Vatkin, age 17, and Rael Zainaloff, age 21. The father of the girl arrived at the apartment to visit her daughter and found the two unconscious. Lee Vatkin is the daughter of a British immigrant. The funeral will be held at 11:15 tonight at Har HaMenochot Cemetery in Jerusalem. In arts and entertainment news, a flamenco performance for the whole family. The Netta Shazaf Flamenco Dance Theater, inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's tale, The Little Mermaid, presents The Spanish Mermaid. It will be performed by Shazaf and her ensemble at the Inbal Ethnic Center at the Susan Dalal Center in Tel Aviv this Wednesday at 5 o'clock. She's won international acclaim as a flamenco dancer, teacher, and choreographer, and has performed at the Lincoln Center in New York and with gypsy dance companies in Spain, Italy, Madrid, Mexico, and Japan. Stock Talk now. Share prices on the Tel Aviv Exchange declined today. Shekel slightly higher in foreign currency trading. Let's take a look at the late afternoon numbers. Tomorrow's weather should be about like today. Partly cloudy, pleasant temperatures. Here are the highs and lows. And that's all for today. I'm Yochanan El Rom. Thanks for watching. Have a good evening, and shalom from Jerusalem.